Josh Heupel coming off a bye. So like I said, I read your stuff. I love your stuff. It's on offthehooksports.com. But this one I specifically didn't read because I wanted to get a fresh reaction off Josh Heupel coming off a bye. And you say he's elite after bye weeks. I didn't even try to process it over the weekend. I knew you were writing the column, but I thought he probably would be because he's an incredible tactician and game planner. And you give those type of guys an extra 7 days to prepare, they're probably going to be pretty good. So I want you to tell me why he's elite, and I'm not surprised. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience in Andy Mason's office, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service, real estate, Knoxville. Do it, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Support our sponsors. They're why we are here. Why is Josh Heupel elite coming off of bye weeks, sir?
So let's just take what he's done at Tennessee so far. He's had 2 bye weeks. Both of them were coming off the bye week in both instances, 2021 and 22. He was facing a ranked team on the road. Last year's was LSU. We saw what he did off that bye week, 40-13 blowout.
They were incredible. But I thought that there were issues that LSU had with an early start, an early fumble, much like Tennessee had issues in the South Carolina game. Totally different issues, but there were things that went into the game that I didn't think helped LSU. And I thought
that's true, but Heupel had a touchdown pass to Jalen Hyatt dialed up that was it was completely schemed that he had done for 2 weeks. And
definitely not downplaying anything that they did in that game. That was impressive.
The year before, Tennessee went to Kentucky, and that was their signature win 2 years ago. This was a 10-3 Kentucky team, a ranked team. Tennessee was struggling to try to stay bowl eligible. Coming off a bye, Tennessee goes and beats Kentucky at Kroger Field at night, which we've talked about Tennessee's issues on the road at night. And so that was a huge win for them. Now, tracking him off byes, planned and unplanned. And I say unplanned because Heupel did have a bye at UCF one year where a game was canceled due to weather. And that counts as a bye, doesn't it? Because once the game's canceled, you're preparing for the next week. So it's the same.
For the sake of the discussion, we'll say yes, but I think it's kind of a goofy week. So you're not really preparing for the next opponent because you don't know that the game's canceled until 2 days before. But all right, for the sake of the discussion, we'll go ahead and take that one.
Okay. So including that, Heupel is 7-1 coming off a bye. Now, his one loss was in 2020, which is a COVID-shortened year and limited practices as it was. It was at Memphis, when Memphis was also coming off a bye. Memphis was the defending American Athletic Champions. He was at UCF at the time, and Memphis won by 1 point. That's his only loss coming off a bye. Now, let's delve into a little bit deeper. Heupel's critics are going to say he's 3-4-1 against the spread coming off a bye. That's a little misleading, though, because what people need to understand is the spread Vegas takes into account when you're coming off a bye. So so whatever points they give you, they're going to give you even more points. So it's harder to meet that expectation. And they give Heupel a lot of points when he's coming off a bye. And a lot of these games have been against teams that themselves were coming off a bye. So you don't really have the advantage. What you need to look at is how has Heupel done when he's had a week off against an opponent that has not had a week off, which is Tennessee's situation with Texas A&M this week. He is 6-0 and 4-2 against the spread when that happens.
So Tennessee should play really well this week is what you're telling me, right?
They should. Not to mention, not all these other teams that he's played had a grueling fight like Texas A&M did with Alabama this last week. Most of them don't have that type of game the week before. So
this is getting a little bit of play on the message board. So I want to give it some credence here for just a second. You said Tennessee more likely to go 10-2 or 6-6.
I said they're more likely to go 10-2. If it's one of those two, it's more likely to go 10-2.
Okay, would everybody agree on that? Because Rocky Tom says 6-6, and he was first off the bat. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on the message board: 6-6 or 10-2. I feel pretty good about saying that if I had to bet a mortgage payment, Tennessee would be 10-2 over 6-6. I don't even think that's close. I think if you made it 11-1, that.
Well, then you're taking 6-6. It's more likely that they lose to Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, and Kentucky than it is that they beat Alabama and Georgia.
But I just don't see 6-6 at all being a possibility. Somebody says 10-2. Now said Now, if I threw 7-5 in there, if I threw 7-5 or 10-2, then you have a whole different discussion. I just don't see any way that they go 6-6. I don't see
Well, they
any
could lose.
way they slip to that point.
Well, if they lose this weekend, at Missouri and at Kentucky are still tough, and then Alabama and Georgia, that would be 6 losses.
Yeah,
None of those are like circled wins.
No, they're not. And the reason they're not is because it's pretty simple. I think quarterback play across the board. So even Missouri is hanging with opponents, and they look pretty good this year. But when you compare their quarterback play to the rest of the league, it's what, about the same or maybe even above average this year.
I think what's helping Missouri is they are one of the ones with actually a good quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Last year, we would have said that quarterback with a Bryce Young and a Hendon Hooker out there is the middle of the pack, right?
Right, exactly. So I'll bring this up. Here's why I'm leaning your way. After doing my research on
which way is that? Because I've almost talked myself into 2 ways.
10-2 is more likely than 6-6. Maybe 7-5 is debatable. But the more I'm thinking about it in my head, doing the post piece I did last weekend, we debated this with John. I think Texas A&M is a more likely win for Tennessee than Missouri or Kentucky because of the bye. I think the bye is huge for Tennessee.
Wow.
I don't think it's as much of a pick'em anymore because Tennessee had the week off, and I don't think you can underestimate having that week off.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far. I think Texas A&M. You would agree, or would you agree that Texas A&M, of those 3 teams you just mentioned, is the best team just to show up on a Saturday?
Yes, but we're going to get into this, particularly tomorrow with the new segment that we talked about. But I think Texas A&M may have the dumbest coach of the 3, also, and that includes Eli Drinkwitz.
Wow, that's saying something. Here's the thing about Texas A&M. I've never seen a coach do such a great job of going in, raising expectations, and then lowering expectations because their fan base almost seems ecstatic with 4-2. So, I mean, over the weekend, they were able to hang tight with Alabama, and they lost 26-20, and that feels like a win. But what year are we in? The Jimbo Fisher experience shouldn't
year 6.
Yeah, shouldn't a close win to Alabama or close loss to Alabama and winning 8 games be bottom of the barrel at this point, that's looking like the kind of program they're going to be.
Yeah, you don't celebrate that if you're Jimbo Fisher at this point. And that's why I think, again, I want to emphasize this. Tennessee off the bye, Texas A&M emphasizing moral victories against Alabama. Who do you think has the edge just psychologically this weekend between the 2?
That's a good question. You?
It's got to be Tennessee. They got a week off. They're fully rested. Unless, and this is the only thing, because we want to hash back to Vegas, moving to line 3. Maybe people in practice feel like Tennessee hasn't found a Brewer McCoy replacement.
Well, I mean, how could they have? I mean, the injury just happened. By the way, I want to thank everybody who purchased the book, Celebrate 98, The Untold Stories Behind Tennessee's 1998 National Championship. It's right down there. If you want to click on it, you can order it. We're still doing the Give Him 6 campaign through the rest of the week. Every book sold, $6 will go to buy one of the AED machines that Brew McCoy has supported, the Peyton Walker Fund, which provides those sideline or it could be during practice, during games or practice, that can literally shock a player back to life. So if you want to purchase the book, now's a great time. Christmas isn't far away. We greatly appreciate that. And we'll be at Hound Dogs on Friday with Fred White doing a book signing. That's right there in Kingston Pike off of Cedar Bluff. So a lot going on the program. And as we get back into game week,